What's up, Platinum Briefers? Today, I'm sitting down with George Carrillo, the CEO of the Hispanic Construction Council, and we're breaking down tariffs and how the United States taking back the Panama Canal is going to have an impact on investing opportunities in the port infrastructure and adjacent industries. Now, George is talking all about the legislation, the regulations, and how investment is going to potentially look like for ports and the future growth of new ports all throughout the world. Here's the interview. Obviously, we have a ton of stuff going on right now with President Trump and tariffs, and that is meaning some crazy things are going on with ports and infrastructure. I actually just saw a report today that was saying that the ports of Los Angeles and Long Beach are seeing a lot less kind of traffic because of these tariffs. And I guess that kind of leads me to my first question, just to get right into things here. As these kind of tensions around trade and tariffs start to grow, how do you see that now kind of shaping demand for new port infrastructure and industrial projects around those ports as well?
Well, I think right now what we're faced with, it's like this whiplash effect of tariffs. One day they're on, the next day they're off, and then all of a sudden, the percentage, goes up and it drops. And so we don't know what to believe in this environment. Mm-hmm. And I think when it comes to like this geopolitical tension, our ports are going to be struggling right now because, we know that China has, turned ships around in retaliation to this tariff war. But right now, I think that there's some critical things that we can do. The reality of the situation is that we can't manufacture. We can't build everything that we need to build in this country without the help of our partners across the globe. And this is some of the questions that I ask. The administration is, are we trying to get into the products of, creating jeans here in the United States, or are we going to rely on Taiwan that can make it for $4? There's no way that we can do that level of work here. Our labor is too high. We don't necessarily always have all of the material. What is it that the president is trying to accomplish here? If he's trying to just create more opportunity for more manufacturing and sort of live in this golden age of what America once was, I think it's a strategy that's going to economically continue to hurt us. I believe in bringing more jobs here into the United States, but understanding that we just can't make everything here. Mm-hmm. And so we need our ports ready to be able to work with different partners, whoever that partner might be. Right now, we have a fractured relationship with China, so we might be looking at other countries, and we need our ports to be able to be ready to be able to take in that new trade. I think when we think about the infrastructure of our ports, we really need to start doing the proper investments in that infrastructure. We need to be also increasing the infrastructure of our IT and understanding the vulnerability that we have in any sort of break-in cybersecurity. We need to be able to incorporate AI and other great tools in order to be able to help support and shore up those ports of entry. So yeah, that's the way I kind of see right now these rising tensions. I think right now for ports to be able to understand take advantage of the slow time that we have right now, start investing in that infrastructure, because the reality is that we need our trade partners. It's going to pick back up again once we figure out what the president is doing with tariffs.
Yeah. And I want to get into some of those projects that are most needed right now. And I want to mention too, you bring up a great point, because even if something is brought back to the US, a lot of investors need to understand that some of these materials are not in the US, right? So even if a product is technically made here 100%, quote unquote, a lot of the materials come from elsewhere. So that's obviously tariff impacted, that's impacting our ports and what needs to come in as well. So yeah, I want to get into those projects, because you mentioned what do you think are some of the most needed construction projects around ports right now? Is it in expansion? Is it in the modernization of them, especially when it comes to the Panama Canal? Because that's something that has been really hot lately, something that the administration has targeted. Is it entirely rebuilding some of these ports? What do you think are some of like the bigger things that companies should be focusing on?
Well, I think with our ports is, oh, so sorry. I think with our ports, each port is going to be a little bit different. And I think as you're looking, just across the West Coast, Oakland's ports need some new infrastructure. We need to be able to have larger capacity for ships. Even here in Oregon, we really struggle with our ports, down in Coos Bay. And when we're looking at, Seattle, major port area there, but these are aging infrastructure. We really need to start updating that infrastructure when we think about our weather patterns and how summers are getting a lot hotter. These infrastructures that we have built from cranes and from containers and from concrete slabs, I mean, they're pretty old and they're pretty beaten up, and we need to start really thinking about new products that are going to be able to weather the storm that we currently have with climate change right now. And when we look down on the Panama Canal, there needs to be a massive investment there. I think if we are going to take more of an active role down in the Panama Canal, then we need to start looking at that infrastructure. It's pretty old. It hasn't been well maintained, and so there's a lot of opportunities for American companies to go down there and really address all of those concerns. When we think about automation needs to be one of those key factors that we're looking at our ports of entry. How do we get things in and out of our ports way quicker? How we're utilizing our technology to stop the bottleneck that we're having at our ports. But also too, we have to be responsible with what's happening too in our ports. That's working with Department of Homeland Security, really getting to the root of human trafficking that is coming through containers, or fentanyl, or any other dangerous drugs and weapons. We really need to take a serious look at that and be able to work with government in order to be able to root out those evils that are coming through our ports of entry.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, in Panama Canal, obviously the United States uses that as one of its main ports. And the last time it was majorly updated was around a decade ago. So yeah, it definitely, there's a lot of, potential there, I think. And a lot of companies, especially now, the administration's talked about sort of the Chinese influence in the Panama Canal. But I want to ask, as far as alternative ports go, because a lot of these companies now, they're trying to potentially go around and find other types of ports that they can use other than the Panama Canal, other than some of these domestic ports, many of them that you mentioned. Are you seeing any sort of increased interest in new ports and the creation of new ports? And more importantly, any alternative shipping routes right now from companies because of like these rising tariffs and kind of global trade conflicts, we'll call them?
Yeah. So I think everything's on the table right now, from conversations of, having routes through the Suez Canal to Arctic passages. These are all conversations that I think everyone across the globe is having, and being able to figure out how do we get products more affordable, whether it's to the United States or to other trade partners across the globe. And I think that right now, what we're going to be faced with is some really difficult decisions, because these other routes may not be more cost effective. And so we might be trying to create a route because we don't want to pay tariffs, and that tariffs are just so unpredictable that we're actually creating more cost by creating these alternative routes to try to bypass these tariffs. And so I think that volatility in the market is just creating a lot of conversation about solutions of what we can do in order to create some level of stability. And I think that's what people are looking for. People are looking for stability. Mm-hmm. Let tariffs do what they're going to do, and we're going to try to figure out some alternative resources in order to create stability in the market. Mm-hmm. And right now, it's sort of this unknown. But what's that going to do to prices here in the United States? What is that going to do to demand from foreign countries getting products here from the United States, if now they have to wait longer and it's actually more expensive because of that extra added travel that's going to have to be tacked on now to the price of that product.
Yeah, and as these sort of infrastructure improvements and new kind of expansions to some of these ports happen, do you see that, you mentioned kind of AI, automation, do you see these things as being able to potentially mitigate some of those costs as they go through, making things more efficient? Is that kind of a way that some of these ports will be able to, and some of these businesses, be able to keep prices either the same or lower them potentially?
Possibly. I think what AI is going to be able to do is going to be able to hopefully streamline some of that work and just the process of intaking and being able to report what's coming through our ports, especially to like the federal government. I think that will be able to help with minimizing the costs of the operation. In the grand scheme of things, is that going to save a ton of money onto the product? Probably not. I mean, for as much product that's coming in and out of our ports, I mean, we're talking about pennies on the dollar here, but it is some cost savings, and it is necessary. I think that AI will be able to provide opportunities to have other conversations of being able to look and analyze different ports, different routes, different weather patterns, determining how do we get products from point A to point B quicker, safer, without losing products along the way. So I think there's cost savings in how you look at it, but I think that the instability in the market is really what's going to say to everybody, what's the right route to take? What's the right approach to take? Do we look at regions like Vietnam and Mexico? Are we going to start investing more in their ports and being able to sell more products to those nations? Or if there's no tariffs on them on certain products, will we increase the volume of products that we're receiving from there? And how do we build that infrastructure globally to be able to support that?
Sure. And you mentioned regions. I do want to know, as far as regions that countries or businesses could potentially increase infrastructure or construction around, especially places that maybe right now don't have huge port presence that could potentially have them. What regions do you see potentially having those big spikes in demand or significant increase in port infrastructure because more businesses and countries are starting to choose, like you mentioned, like Mexico and Vietnam, to change their sort of supply lines?
Right. Well, we're going to have to look at where is the labor relatively low. And so when you look at Vietnam, it's a good place. They manufacture a lot. Their labor is at a lower price point. We can look at Malaysia, at Indonesia. These are all alternatives to diversifying away from China due to the high tariffs. I think also too, like we look at Latin America, looking at Mexico and Panama, really like sort of driving up those nearshore trends. And I just think when we look at these alternative ports and these alternative opportunities, it does provide an opportunity for Americans to go into a foreign country and to be able to invest and really be able to prop up, their economies and be able to bring products here to the United States at a much lower price point. And so there is an opportunity of investment that will definitely help American investors in foreign countries and help out the American consumers and being able to get those products here at a much lower price.
Yeah, and as we're kind of talking right now, and as as this video has been being recorded, the dollar has hit sort of a 3-year low right now. So as obviously, there's a lot of uncertainty in kind of U.S. markets and what's going on, and investors are kind of looking for, where they can invest. So I think that potentially I agree with them searching for those alternative kind of areas, especially globally. Where can they invest at? I want to know too, if we kind of get a little bit more specific. Now, our report talks a lot about infrastructure around these ports and what's going to be needed, right? So what do you see as far as construction goes? which types of companies or suppliers stand to benefit the most from upcoming port expansion or upgrades? For instance, like cement companies, piping, logistic companies, which kind of will be sort of the ones that end up benefiting the most because of these expansions?
Well, with these expansions, I mean, when we think about concrete, the ports of entry need a massive amount of concrete. So you're absolutely right. Concrete is a good investment on your dollars when you're thinking about construction, but also steel. You know, we use a lot of rebar in construction. When we think about commercial buildings, again, those are more steel reinforced. So steel is another product and another thing that's used heavily within construction. When I think about some of the other infrastructure that's really going to be needed, and just a lot of people in order to be able to create these, this infrastructure, we're really going to need to look at a really stable workforce, and that stable workforce is going to be really, detrimental to all these things that we need, because across the country, we just don't have enough workers. We're currently about 500,000 workers short. And so what we really need to be looking at is investing in a workforce in order to be able to do these port upgrades that we currently need. And when I think about companies, some companies to really be able to look at, I think the one company that comes to mind is MasTec. They really focus on infrastructure and large projects. They're about the third largest construction company, but kind of the leaders in infrastructure development. So this will be, I think, a great opportunity for that construction company and for people to really look as the leaders in investing in port infrastructure.
What about on the tech side? So one of the other big parts of our report is kind of covering the potential for improvement in sort of radar systems, 5G infrastructure for sort of the short kind of range communication as people are working on ports, as ships are coming into the ports, ship guidance tech kind of around that. Do you see a growing need for that kind of construction projects to create those things as well? And what other kind of tech could potentially benefit from this increased port investment?
Well, tech right now, I mean, in all those areas that you talked about, technology is constantly evolving. And so right now we really have to look at our ports and be able to say, okay, do they have the right infrastructure when it comes to technology? And I would gather to say that a lot of systems are just outdated. And now with the incorporation of AI, what current technology, and I'll be honest with you, that it's evolving so rapidly, I can't even get my mind around all of the different programs that we really need to look at and also be cautious with, simply because AI is still relatively new to us. There still has to be that human element to the work that we do, and we can't just simply rely on AI to solve all of our problems. And so we really do need to look at, those critical components. So what I'm more worried about when we think about our tech industry is cybersecurity. We really need to be able to protect our ports from other foreign nations, being able to get into our databases and maneuver things around, simply because those are the critical records that we need, and that's the way that we conduct checks on goods and figuring out what products don't we want in our country and what products do we want in our country. So I think that's one thing. Cybersecurity needs to be on the forefront, and we are constantly being attacked in this country when it comes to cybersecurity. We are constantly getting our data and information taken from foreign entities. We have to start investing in that technology for our ports of entry.
Yeah, even as recently as the last year, we saw a huge outage with CrowdStrike, right? So, these sort of cybersecurity firms have been at the forefront of a lot of different things. Obviously, that one had to do with Microsoft. And one thing that we see a ton here on the briefs team is we're looking at companies' financial reports that they have, their 10K reports, and we're constantly seeing more and more companies just listing cybersecurity as a potential risk to their business and their operations more and more often today than I definitely ever have. So it's something that a lot of companies, I think, are talking about right now. Now, when it comes to sort of port, we'll call it port adjacent sort of construction or sort of operations, things like warehouses, right? Data centers, storage facilities, both for cold and just, regular items. Are we seeing a trend in growth for those things too? Because, as these ports kind of grow, are we seeing those things also start to grow, or is it more just kind of ports first and then those things will kind of come next?
Yeah, so I think that's difficult to answer right now. I think what the direction that we need to go in is that we need to have those upgrades. We really do need to look at refrigeration. When we look at, so it's sort of this domino effect that everybody needs to be able to understand, because it's not just about ports of entries. It's just not about tariffs. It's also about mass immigration and what we think about the effects on mass immigration, especially like on the ag sector. If we don't have enough people to pick our fruits and vegetables here, then or milk our cows and all of these other products that, as consumers we consume, we are going to have to get it from somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
And so we need to be ready. If that workforce diminishes through mass immigration, we are going to have to get that from an outside source. And right now, do we have that infrastructure in place? So we need to be having those conversations and build those refrigeration units. Just like data centers, the data centers consume just a ton of energy. Mm-hmm. And the amount of data centers that we need in this country to be able to keep up with the demand of AI, we don't have that power currently right now. So we need the infrastructure to develop enough energy to even fuel those data centers. So, this is all a domino effect of what we need in order to be able to support, for example, our ports. So all things to take into consideration as we're thinking about the supporting elements to our ports. Tons of opportunity, tons of investment opportunities right now that currently exist.
Yeah, absolutely. And interestingly enough, Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, just came out to say that people who use please and thank you to ChatGPT is costing millions of dollars in energy just because they have to, have an extra sort of process that AI goes through. So yeah, definitely a ton of energy that those data centers are using. And when it comes to now, because there was this recent event that kind of happened, or this recent the United States and the Secretary of Defense actually just went down to the Panama Canal, and they established a new partnership with Panama, and kind of the details were honestly pretty vague for it. But they said that they were establishing kind of a partnership and sort of pushing away more from the Chinese influence of that. Do you kind of see that more as, I guess, symbolic more than anything else? Or is that kind of more potentially a real catalyst now for infrastructure development around that region?
Well, I think if we're serious as a country about really working with Panama and working on the Panama Canal, I think we have to look at the threat of China, them having more influence over the past decade with our South American countries. And what does that look like when we think about geopolitical actions of China and what they're doing in South America, Central America, and Mexico? So I think that from a military perspective, if we're going to take a strong stance, then we need to let China know that whatever they were doing down there is no longer going to be tolerated, because we're going to have a show of force, and we're going to reinforce our relationship with Panama and the Panama Canal. And not only are we going to have our businesses, American businesses, grow and prosper here at this port, but we're also going to provide a level of security behind that. So I think it can be a powerful statement if we actually follow through with that, with military reinforcement down there.
Gotcha. And obviously, you're the CEO of a nonprofit. How do kind of nonprofit construction companies in the U.S., what is their role in all of this, right? Especially when it comes to these international projects like in the Panama Canal, you mentioned Vietnam before, or just even more domestic projects. What is sort of, the role that your organization kind of plays in this, or just kind of nonprofits in general to kind of, I guess, get this infrastructure built and ready to go?
Yeah. So I think for each nonprofit plays a different role. And for us, we are a national organization that deals really on a national level, on a federal level, when we're looking at policies and how policies are being implemented and conducting studies and being able to use our media influence to be able to communicate and educate the public at large. And with situations like this, we want to be able to partner up with businesses that have interest in the ports. We want to be able to partner with ports and local governments, so that way we can do studies and also testify on behalf of the industry and be able to get good legislation passed and get good projects started and going. We are really here to support the American people and being able to grow and prosper, and just understand that the workforce, a large portion of that does come from the Hispanic community. And we want to be able to participate, and we want everybody to know that opportunity, it's not slim. And so the more that we participate and the healthier that we are, only creates more opportunity and more wealth creation in this country for everyone. And so that's the way we participate. And we want to be able to also incorporate other nonprofits that aren't a local level. They provide, assistance with workforce development. They provide assistance with technical assistance for business owners to be able to grow and participate on big projects like this. So we want to partner up with them and be able to really have boots on the ground that are taking full advantage of the opportunities. I always tell people, doesn't matter whether it's a Republican or a Democrat in office, whether it's an up or down economy, there's always going to be opportunity. We just have to have our eyes open to it, and we need to participate.
Absolutely. I love that. We feel the exact same way. George, thank you so much for joining us today. I learned a lot, and I know our readers did too.
Awesome. Thank you so much for having me.